Today I'm going to review some Limitless heads up, and yeah, you've probably seen them before, but today he's playing on GG Poker at 200, 400 deep ante, so that's going to be a lot of fun. Well, these are two monsters heads up. I'm expecting a 3-bet by Michael almost always. Deep stack, maybe he wants to call this hand sometimes, but 3-betting is definitely standard. And then Victor will usually call, but sometimes 4-bet for sure. Let's see what he does. Victor does go ahead and call. We see a 10-5-3 flop, which is not that scary. I mean, Victor's probably going to have a set advantage here because he's going to always call 5s and 3s pre-flop, whereas Michael will often call them. And then Michael obviously will have 10s 100% of the time, but, you know, Victor will have 10s a lot too. I'm expecting a 4-bet sometimes. Obviously, Michael is ahead when it comes to kings, queens, aces, that type of stuff. So I'm expecting a pretty aggressive strategy by Michael here. Let's see. Also, he's mostly a tournament player, and most tournament players would end up betting range here, despite the stack size. He goes small. And Victor with ace queen, this is usually going to be a call. Your hand is way too strong to fold. It's a nice hand to call down on ace and queen runouts with. You can turn your hand into a bluff on some runouts, and you just can't fold ace queen to a, you know, sub third pot bet size here. Wouldn't be shocked if he raised occasionally, but this hand is usually a call, almost always. This 10 is obviously a card that kind of, you know, bricks everything except for that 10. So I guess Victor could have floated a hand like Jack 9 of clubs on the flop and I improves to a flush draw. But other than that, this card doesn't do a whole lot. It mostly makes both players some trips. So Michael could decide to bluff a hand like this. I mean, he blocks king 10, he blocks queen 10, he blocks the king high flush draw that's going to continue. So, and if Victor folds a hand like, you know, 8, 9 of spades, that's not too bad for him, right? Because that hand still has 2 outs. It still has 4 outs, and he still can bluff river, and king queen is not check calling that easily. So I could see a bluff happening sometimes. I actually kind of like it. Obviously, you can't just bluff here with like ace deuce, ace 4, 6 4, 6 7 clubs. You know, jack 9, queen jack, king queen, king jack, name it. Maybe like even undercards, because then you're just way overdoing it. So Michael decides to go for the 2/3 pot bet. At this point, he's mostly representing either a 10 or a 2 pair. And Victor's thinking, well, I block aces, I block ace 10, I block queen 10. I have the ace of clubs, so I can maybe bluff raise the river. So I expect him to just call here. The king is obviously a great card for Michael's hand. He is usually not betting king high on the turn, or ace king, let's say. So the card is not that relevant. He could have had like a king 4 of clubs type of hand. And Victor actually doesn't hate this king either because he knows he blocks it well. So if Michael were to check, I would expect to see it go check, check. But I'm expecting a bet, of course. And Michael eventually bets 3rd pot. While I hear a kitty. And once the kitty stops meowing, Michael gets the win. So he bets 3rd pot on the river, which is a fine play. Obviously, you can't only bet that way with hands like king queen. You have to bet a 10 like this sometimes as well. But I don't really mind the play. And Victor's thinking, well, I block the good 10s, I block a flush draw which he won't bluff with, and I block a good king. And I do unblock hands like 6-4, 6-7, etc. So, I mean, obviously he's not expecting a win here. At the same time. Yeah, he's not expecting a win, but he knows that Michael can have a couple of bluffs, and he's getting great odds, so seems like a cool hand. What do you guys think of this one? Easy open raise with any suited 10. And obviously, if there's one hand you want to 3-bet, it's aces. Victor chooses a slightly larger sizing here. And Michael, pretty loose call with 10-5 suited. That definitely means he's up a few million on GG if you want to make that call. But he's thinking, in all seriousness, he's thinking, well, Victor 3-bets a wide range, and, you know, we're also quite deep. There's an ante in there, so I'm going to go with a slightly lighter call. So Victor likes to have a checking range on his board, which I definitely like, and he thinks, well, aces is a nice hand to check and trap with. Michael, I mean, he has a backdoor straight draw, he has a backdoor flush draw, but, you know, pretty weak one, so checking behind would be the standard play. Unless he believes that Victor, of course, is very weak when checking, but as you can tell, he is not. King's an amazing card for Victor because if he checks on this flop, he's going to check aces and ace-king and whatever a decent amount of the time. He should even trap and check hands like queen 10 sometimes, so he's going to improve a lot on this turn, and he can be quite aggressive. So I'm expecting a bet and a fold. Be pretty cool to see him check, because if Victor were to check, Michael probably stabs with 10-5 sometimes. And despite the small bet here, Michael's getting great odds, but he should fold. I mean, he has a gut shot, which is not to the nuts, on a paired board with a flush shot out there that he doesn't have. So calling here is a mistake, I would say. Don't call, Michael. Don't call. This card is just really good for Victor. So it's not like you can just float this flop, float this turn and expect to get a lot of check folds. Unless, of course, you run like Michael Addamo in your deluxe box and you actually get there. And now I'd like to see a pretty big but not huge value bet. You're representing a full house, a straight, a flush, maybe some check back trips, maybe something like king queen. So, you know, I would say around 10k makes sense. 11.8 it is. And Victor's thinking like, man, what is this guy bluffing with? You know, maybe like 9-8 he's bluffing with, that type of stuff. And Victor, what does he do? He calls. Again, this is one of those calls where, you know, it's pretty close, and against a very competent opponent, you would have to make this call, but against a bad opponent, you cannot make it. So he obviously gave Michael credit for being able to bluff here. So Michael decides to limp here, which is kind of new. Ace-3 suited is usually just going to be a raise. Yeah. Especially the first time, right? You're like, what the hell's going on here? Maybe this was just a misclick. I assume Michael's going to call. Limp 3-bet would definitely be the worst play. Oh, okay. Sorry. Michael does go ahead and limp 3-bet. I definitely am not a fan of this play. I understand what he's doing. He's kind of thinking, well, my hand's a bit weak to call. It's a bit strong to fold. Let me just limp 3-bet. But this is not a great limp 3-bet candidate. Let's see what Victor does. I could see Victor 4-bet this hand. Or call. Great flop for Michael's range. I mean, he does have queen 8 offsuit apparently. I think he probably just limped because he wanted to. I'm not sure he's really thought about that strategy because, I mean, we haven't seen a limp just yet. So I'd like to see what he does next. On this board, you know, c-betting range, I wouldn't blame him if he did. Quarter pot bet seems fine to me. And Victor's just gonna call with a weak ace, I assume. Especially once the pot's, say, 170k plus, you're usually gonna lose again because, you know, you'll be up against jacks or aces. And this is a great card for Victor because he has a gut shot. So if Michael continues to bet with a big ace or even aces or jacks, you got some outs. And obviously this card doesn't really improve Michael, right? So, I mean, maybe Michael has like king 5 suited sometimes, something like that, but that's still behind an ace. And I'd like to see Michael just check behind here. He doesn't really have that much equity. He doesn't have the greatest blockers. So I'd like to see him just give up. He does block ace queen, which is pretty nice. Because we can expect Victor to mostly 4-bet ace king. So Michael does go ahead and bet. I'm not a fan of his bet size. I think that's unnecessary. He should just bet much smaller. He's really trying to apply pressure, right? He's really saying, hey, Victor, it's time for you to fold an ace. Victor, it's time for you to fold king jack. Yeah, pretty interesting play. So the thing is, if the boards were very draw heavy, betting this sizing would make sense. But it's not as if you're applying that much more pressure because the river is going to be 70k and Victor will have 55 and you can easily shove, right? But if you just bet like 17k or 15k, you can do the same thing. You bet 15k, the pot's going to be 50 and Victor will have 65 behind. Or if you want to bet full pot, the pot's going to be 60 and Victor will have 60. But 25 is not necessary, in my opinion. Of course, a big bet does make sense. Michael's trying to target hands like an ace here. Or queen jack, that type of stuff. And now Michael does river an 8. However, is this going to be enough? So he beats hands like king, queen of diamonds sometimes. Or maybe like 4 or 5 of diamonds. So he can win sometimes, but unlikely. So if he shoves, the idea would be that Michael blocks ace 8 suited and he blocks ace queen, which could call. I expect him to give up. Also, Michael doesn't usually play this big, so he could be slightly money scared in the big pots. Who knows? Maybe he's not. Maybe he just ships all in. And he does check. Nice call by Victor. Victor is definitely not money scared. Standard open raise and standard call. Maybe Victor will 3-bet sometimes. So Michael does start limping here. Maybe somebody sent him some type of calculation and he's changed his strategy. Or maybe the tournament player in him wants to start limping the button. 9-7 is hand to mix it up with. I mean, you've got a medium strength hand with some backdoors. Oh shit. So this pot is going to be extremely large because Victor probably thinks that if Michael had a 7 or 10s or 7s, he would have bet the flop. So he believes that he has the best hand like 97% of the time, unless, let's say, Michael did check behind a 7 or he, let's say, trapped with pocket 10s. So this pot is going to be large. Let's see if Victor ends up betting or check raising. So Michael ends up betting 40% pot. Seems fine. We know that he's going to be in big trouble. However, he doesn't know that. He just sees trips on a dry board, so he doesn't need to bet that large. So this is where Victor gets it back. This is a perfect last hand. Victor check raise is quite small. Surprised he didn't go bigger, but fine. And I'd like to see Michael just call here. I mean, he sometimes wants to call with trips. Otherwise, when he calls, then he'll get owned on the river. If he had a better 7, maybe he would 3-bet. But this one probably just want to end up calling. I mean, Victor can easily have A7, King 7, Queen 7, Jack 7, 8-7. Oh, sorry, 8-7. You'd love him to have, right? So Michael does go ahead and 3-bet here. In theory, it's a fine play sometimes. You just have to make sure to add bluffs, right? And that's not easy. So Michael's probably thinking with the 9 of spades, I want to raise a little bit more often. And Victor, let's see if Victor turns this into a click-back war. Victor does turn it into a click-back war. I mean, he didn't even raise it 10k or anything. And now I'd like to see Michael just call. Victor is not going to re-raise many 10x or pocket 4s or whatever, so he's not getting value to raise, and he'll just, dig himself into a bigger hole. Let's see. If Michael rivers a 9, then I quit poker. Okay. Now, the deuce doesn't hurt Victor at all, because it's not like Michael has 7 deuce, to limp on the button. Maybe suited, who knows, but probably not. So Victor is happily continuing here. I'd like to see what he's going to bet. I could see anything from like 5k to like 30k happening. He probably thinks that Michael has the 7. And so I'm surprised that he only bets this little. And I think Michael should probably end up calling here. Drum roll. I mean, I don't see him being able to fold this. No, had Victor bet like 30k, then yeah, sure, I would have seen a fold sometimes. So nice hand by Victor. He basically leveled him into thinking he was bluffing. And, we all know that Victor's capable of some big ones. So pretty cool last hand.